right, I think we're live. Good morning, everyone, and I hope that you've had a fantastic week, and I hope that this helps start your week out, or for some of you who watch it in the middle of the week, help boost your week to being another fantastic week. We're going to start, and we're going to talk a lot about security today, and some of the things that you should know about security, and some of the things that happened in security this last week, and then we're going to wrap it up with some good general discussions. And at the end, I have a secret that's going to I'm going to show you something really exciting, so please stick around for the end if you'd like to see something that I just found today. Or not today, yesterday. I found it yesterday. Absolutely love it. Probably going to do a Mighty Mini Monday on one of those. I'm not going to commit to doing a Mighty Mini Monday every week, but it is something that I would like to do at least once a month because I think people really like these small chunks of useful information. There are a lot of work to do, but I do want to do a few of those. So if any of this sounds interesting, and the cloud news will definitely be in there, but there wasn't a whole lot of it other than security related things, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and help me out to bring you more of this information on a weekly basis. Now, that's being said, let me be clear. The weekend of the September 10th, I am not going to be in the office, and so I won't be doing news on that day. So, yeah. I do have a special video that I'm making in lieu of the news. So on Monday morning, you're still going to have something to watch if you like it. And so please stick around and see that. But yeah, I won't be doing the news live. All right. One last thing. As always, all opinions here are those of my own. I have not been asked to say anything by anybody. I haven't been paid to say anything, and all my opinions are that of my own, and they don't reflect my past, current, or any future companies. These are just my opinions. All right, let's move on. We do, at the very beginning, before security, have two birthdays we need to mention, and those are both Linux and EC2. Why do I think EC2 is important? We'll get to that in a second, but it is important to recognize Linux is 30 years old. And really, Linux has revolutionized the way we do everything. So anyways, if you know a Linux kernel developer or an ex-Linux developer like myself, I didn't ever do kernel stuff, go ahead, show them some love. Because yeah, their project has really revolutionized what we've done, and it's so important, so crucial to so many businesses. So, yep, Linux turning 30 is super important. Now, EC2 turning 15, why I even bring that up is because really, EC2 revolutionized the cloud. It's almost like the Linux of the cloud. Now, I know you can argue EC2 really was the first one to do it well and to really do that. So, basically, yeah, EC2 revolutionized the cloud, almost like Linux revolutionized computing. So anyways, those two birthdays happened all in the same month. So cool. Let's move on to let's move on to the cloud failing us. Has the cloud failed us? Let me ask you that. I'm going to give you a lot of keynotes where the cloud might have failed us today. But in general, I would say that it's actually safer than if I tried to do it all myself. So while I bring these up and they're things that you should know and be cognizant and aware of, please take it with a grain of salt that I actually think that all of this is really hard, and that for the most part, we're actually probably safer using the clouds than our own knowledge because they get the experience across a lot of companies and are generally larger and have better security teams than we do. All right, so this is where we're going to start. I'm not going to show you a slide on it, but Google did have a massive outage. So they had a very new region in Australia that was like supposed to be their big brand new thing, and it had a hard stop after a month of running. Kind of embarrassing because it was down solidly for an hour and then slowly came back online over the rest of the day. And I guess it was due to transient voltage, which if you don't know what transient voltage is, think lightning striking something would be what they call transient voltage. I don't know how I'm not that much into electricity, but that is transient voltage. So when they say transient voltage, think lightning strike. Most data centers should survive this, so not really sure exactly what happened. But it turns out random acts of God still take down databases. All right, so let's look at ChaosDB. This actually wasn't clickbait. So I know most of you are accustomed to me clickbaiting, but this is what Wiz has named their security vulnerability that they found, and it is quite bad. So ChaosDB is basically Cosmos DB from Azure, and they found a way that basically they could get admin credentials to any database in ChaosDB. Now, I say any. It actually had one caveat. Any database that was running... Oops. Sorry. Any database that was running Jupyter Notebooks plugin that Cosmos DB has. So not everyone. Now, again, there's actually a caveat to that, because by default, if you don't disable it by default, it actually is deployed by default with your Cosmos DB and then disabled after like a week if you don't use it. So there would be a week of vulnerability. So that being said, everybody is encouraged to rotate their keys. Now, Microsoft has emailed anybody that it thinks is affected by this, but Wiz thinks that it actually is a larger footprint and would probably be wise just to rotate your keys in case your Jupyter Notebook was ever deployed with it, or the Jupyter Notebook service. You want to know what caused all of this pain, though? The thing that caused all of this was misconfiguration, and this is like starting to sound like a broken record. Configuration is super important, whether it's Kubernetes, databases, or your ingress for Kubernetes or whatever you do. Kubernetes or configuration is super important, and really in the cloud, I think configuration is probably more important than a lot of other aspects. I know in software engineering, we all too often think about things like a Stack Overflow and the security implications, or memory management and the security implications. And those are good things to worry about. But those are also probably more crucial to being a good application, for one. But they're also really important for locally run things, which we'll actually see in the very next thing. And in the cloud, I would say that configuration and sanitizing user data are probably the really two big things that, they can go into more advanced attacks, but if they can get you with sanitation and misconfiguration, there's no need to do a more advanced attack. So it's really important, really important. So let's go on to the next thing, which Microsoft just did not have a good day today, or last week. It turns out that you could plug a Razer mouse in and get admin privileges to it. And the reason this happened wasn't misconfiguration, but it was kind of a design feature. At Microsoft, they have their partners, which they'll go ahead and get the drivers automatically for you from their partners, which Razer happens to be one of its partners. And what happens is when it goes out and gets those drivers from it, you get whatever drivers, and it happens that Razer, and those drivers actually run in admin, or I don't know what it's called. Razer has some sort of management system. Razer Synapse. Razer Synapse runs in privileged mode, and the problem is Razer Synapse itself has a vulnerability that allows you to execute whatever you like in privileged mode. And this comes down to, you need to know who to trust, even when it comes to hardware. If you plug in a wireless card, you want it to work. But if that wireless card has a vulnerability in it, then it doesn't matter how secure Windows is. If you give it the access to run and you want that hardware to work, that's kind of what you have to do. Now, there's definitely things Microsoft can and is doing. And Microsoft has even responded to this with a patch that kind of half fixes it behind the scenes. But it's something to be cautious about because you have to also be thinking about these things. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to these things. So these are two fantastic documents. I know that we have talked about Kubernetes hardening from the NSA before, but I didn't also show you there is one from the DoD, Enterprise DevSecOps Reference Design. So these go about configuring Kubernetes. So if you're looking at configuring Kubernetes, running Kubernetes, and things like that, definitely check these out. And I think that if you're actually running Kubernetes in production, I would say these are mandatory reads, even if you're not in the cybersecurity team. Now, if you're on the cybersecurity team, hopefully you've already read these before I brought them up. But if you're not, I still think that you should, because it's just really good knowledge if you guys can be operating on the same page and can all work together. Now, this being said, it's not all bad news. Not all bad news. Cloudflare did something kind of cool. This is the largest recorded DDoS attack on record, at least as far as I could verify. They state it is, and I have no verification that there's been a larger one. My question is, if the DDoS attack was successful, would we actually know how large it was? So it's the largest one reported, not necessarily the largest successful attack. Anyways, this is a fantastic read, and one of the reasons it's a really fantastic read is just because it's super cool to see all the data that they give you and how they mitigated it. Cloudflare is super expensive, but they're really good at what they do. So if you can afford them, it's really awesome. Anyways, I suggest you check it out if you're interested in security or anything like that. It's definitely worth a read. If you're just interested in some of the stats, which were as good enough for me, it was still a really good read. So, nice job, Cloudflare. Nice job. On that, Google and Microsoft. I didn't find Microsoft statement, and this page had a lot of ads, so I decided to just leave it with this page. Google has pledged $10 billion over the next 5 years to strengthen cybersecurity, and Microsoft has done $20 billion. I guess they felt like they really needed to step up their game with the ChaosDB unfolding in their face while they were at this meeting. So, you know, I don't actually know how much they normally spend, so like I couldn't really tell you. 10 billion sounds like a lot, but I feel like Google probably should have been spending 10 billion over 5 years on their cybersecurity programs. Anyways, I'm guessing this is more than they currently do, but I don't know how much more. And 20 billion for Microsoft, yeah, again, I don't know how much more, but they are pledging to do more. So yeah, they're going to train 100,000. So this is really good because I think even in the last 4 years where we've talked more about security than we have in all the previous years before that, I honestly think that we still don't talk about it nearly enough. And I know that you guys are probably tired of me talking about it, and I'm not even a cyber professional. So we'll move on. And again, all of these links will be in the description. So if you'd like to actually read these that I'm telling you to go read, please go ahead and read them. All right, so here is another data leak. It is a link to a data leak. Anyways, this is a huge U.S. Data leak affecting everything from a lot of transportation, actually, and some health departments. So you should know if you are vulnerable to it. Definitely happened. Yeah. Here is, this was supposed to go with the other Cloudflare. I don't know how these got separated. These Cloudflare, basically, this one goes into a little bit, this was a higher level overview, so I'm going to put them together. So if you just want a higher level overview of what happened instead of kind of the nerdy breakdown, that's what this one is. So that will be linked together down below if you like them. Let's move on to cloud news. So, to be honest, there wasn't a whole lot of cloud news out there. Not a whole lot happened in the last week, other than the birthdays that we talked about with Linux and EC2. And it was kind of lame. So we're going to cover the few topics that I found, and then we're going to go on to some articles to read. I only have 3. I kind of slimmed down today's content so we could sit and talk about it. If there is anything that you'd like to talk about, please comment in chat, and we'll talk about it. And then I'm gonna show you something that I found really cool. And yeah, let's talk about this. So, introducing AWS Backup Audit Manager. Basically, this is for compliance and compliance or government related things, but it allows you to audit your backup. So AWS Backup Management allows you to manage backups of your AWS stuff, and now it's allowing you to have better insight into auditing and managing that. So it's cool, something that needs to happen. Audit is hard, and we need more tools to make it easier. It's not a hard concept in general, it's just a hard to actually do. And you're absolutely 100% welcome, Grockham. I appreciate your presence, and I appreciate everybody that supports me. You guys are awesome. I have fun doing this, and it's stuff that I would be interested in anyways. And so absolutely, thank you for your guys' continued support. And hopefully you guys like, hopefully this keeps improving for you guys. I sweat less doing this now. I used to get so nervous. I get a little less nervous. Anyhow, moving on. I'm sure you guys don't want to know about my sweating habits. Let's move on. All right, so for Google Cloud, that was pretty much it for AWS. And then for Google Cloud here, we have a few things. I see that this Google Transfer appliance of the online mode seems kind of interesting. The topic retention for Cloud PubSub is now generally available. Now, I really hate Google's naming of their PubSub because it's like PubSub. PubSub is a standard thing, not Google Clouds. But anyways, Google Cloud PubSub, which is what I talk about it as, has topic retention, and it's now in general availability. It's been around for a little while now. It's not brand new, but it is generally available now, which means it's in more regions and more generally available to the public to use, and hopefully more stable. So Vertex predictions now support private endpoints for online prediction. This is basically support for VPC peering. If you don't know what that is, it's how you can have communication between two virtual private clouds, basically two networks. So definitely interesting. And if you guys use these things, if you use Vertex, if you use PubSub and GCP, these are definitely really awesome things. Microsoft really didn't have anything of news except for that it's going to try to fix its problems by hiring Amazon cloud executives. I honestly don't know if this is a great... I don't know if this is the solution. I honestly don't know how much top executives... I think CEOs might have influence, but I don't know how much top executives, especially for how much they are paid, actually drive companies. So we'll see if this actually influences anything about Azure as they bring in a new vice president. So cool. Let's move out of cloud because that was pretty much it. I didn't really find much more interesting other than, interesting note though that I did notice here. AWS didn't commit any billions of dollars. AWS, come on. We need more security. At least do what GCP is, 10 billion. I mean, maybe they're doing like 50 billion already, and so they were like, yeah, we don't need to do any more. Who knows? Let's move on to some interesting topics. This one, this company is trying to make Python better at handling large-scale data, which I found kind of funny because Rust already exists. So I'm not sure what they're doing because the problem has already been solved. I don't know. If you're big into Python, this might be interesting to you. I'm obviously not a big into Python, but if you are, you might want to check this out. And if you're a big Python lover, I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. All right. This was an interesting read. I thought it was worth it to show it to you guys. I don't know how much you guys know about Nomad. Nomad is kind of a competitor to Kubernetes. I'd say kind of. I have a love-hate relationship with Nomad. I do love it. I think that it's better in a lot of regards and worse in a few key regards that make me lean towards Kubernetes. But this is a very detailed why they switched from Kubernetes to Nomad. And now some of it comes down to is they were doing interesting things in using Kubernetes in ways that it wasn't really designed to be used. They were especially using batch processes and batch jobs. Oh, you have a good point with the validity for execs bringing connections and things like that. I can see that. Yes, because generally, I consider people to be as good as the people they stand on other people's shoulders. I honestly don't believe in the 100x engineer or probably even the 10x engineer. Now, I've seen some 2x engineers and I consider them complete rock stars. I'm not one of them. I consider them complete rock stars, but yeah, they're not a 10x engineer. Grogum, you haven't heard of HashiCorp's Nomad? Well, you know what? Nomad is a container orchestrator, not a pod orchestrator, interestingly enough. Although it kind of has a lot of similarities because it's meant to be easy to use if you know how Kubernetes is. And it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't checked it out. So yeah, I would definitely say to check it out. Now, I maybe should do a whole video on it. I thought about actually going and working for Hashi on Nomad because it sounded interesting. But there's a couple reasons I didn't. And, one of them is Nomad, at least at that time. This was a year ago. I don't know if it's changed since, or 2 years ago. I don't know if it's changed since then. But Nomad wasn't really an open source. It has an open source component, but it's so limited, like you can't use it in production. The open source has no functionality, like even secure communication over TLS is not in the open source version. And since they 100% control it, they won't allow it to be. So I can't even run a secure home server of Nomad. So there's some things like that I just really disagree with, and I don't think security should ever be, it's like needing to pay extra for seatbelts in your car. I honestly would even go further and, like the lane warnings when you're trying to merge into a lane that has a car in it in your car. If your company has that shouldn't be extra. That should be a standard feature, just like backup cameras. And so, I think things like secure communication should never be that extra feature. Secure communication, TLS has been around since SSL was originally in the 1990s, and I want to say TLS came out in 1999. But anyways, I don't quote me on exactly when that came out. So those are some of my problems with HashiCorp Nomad. That being said, Nomad is actually really good at some things and better at some things as well. Actually, I would say that it's better at 80% of things, but it has a much smaller community and it really sells you to HashiCorp's things. HashiCorp's things are the only things that work on it. So if you want a ingress and things like this, you need to use Console, HashiCorp's API gateway. You need to use their stuff because it's really the only stuff designed to work with it. And while you can get some other stuff to work on it, it really sells you into HashiCorp. Anyways, that being said, I didn't mean to digress on this. I just meant to explain some of my feelings on Nomad so that you guys are a little bit better informed when I state stuff like that. Anyways, yep. So this is a really good article because I think it goes into somebody that actually thought about their problem and how to solve it and why they solved it the way that they did. And they really explained it really well. And this is what we should be doing as engineers, not just saying, oh, Google uses Kubernetes to great effect. Google uses Kubernetes to great effect for their workloads, which means that, you know, their workloads is how they're running it. But if you're doing it a little bit differently, maybe it's not actually the best thing. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not me saying I don't like Kubernetes. This is just me merely stating it's definitely worth it from an engineering perspective. You really should know why you adopt technology. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to some Kubernetes. So this I found to be a great article on tracking Kubernetes applications effectively. So if you're wondering about this, tracking in Kubernetes can be difficult, and this is a fantastic article. It actually takes a little time to read through. It looks not that long, but it has a lot of information in it, and it goes through a lot of different solutions for tracking in Kubernetes. So definitely take it out. Definitely read it if you're developing stuff in Kubernetes. It's definitely worth it and is a good read. All right, let's go into my obligatory GitHub blog posts here. So this is a transparency report. I love GitHub. They do a lot of things really well, at least from the outside that I can see. Never worked there. So that being said, they have done this transparency report, which is super detailed. I haven't actually read the whole thing. One thing that I did note is they don't have a canary, so I'm assuming it's not 0. Let's see, what's included in this report? They report almost everything here, but let's see. Yeah, in here, they don't have, so there's this thing called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, and basically you're not allowed to report if you've actually had a subpoena by them. And so basically they don't not report them. I don't know exactly where it is. This thing is super long. So anyways, they're not allowed to report, so they give it in breakdowns of 250, I think. Let me see if I can't search that. 250, 255, 254. Ah, here we go. Random grepping here. So yeah, national security letters and orders. Basically, they've had somewhere between 0 and 249. So, but there was no canary that said we don't. Now, I don't know. They might not be allowed to say that anymore. So for a while, a lot of places were saying we currently don't have. They had canaries, which basically they would remove if they've ever had a thing. So they're not actually saying that they've never had a national security letter or order received. So anyways, good report, lots of data, very interesting. Let's move on. This is probably the best thing to happen to GitHub Actions. So prior to this, you've had to use actions all individually. And basically they're now allowing you to create compositions of actions. So they have an example here where they use 3 different actions, and this is actually a very standard one. You're going to set up Docker, you're going to log into Docker, and then you're going to publish with Docker. And this is something you do in almost every single image you build, and now you can wrap all of this into a composite. And now you can just use it as this. They made a new my.org publish Docker. So they made it easy to composite GitHub Actions. So if you're a DevOps team, I think this is super huge and is going to empower you to make really quickly composite ones that your teams can use. Or if you're smaller teams, your teams can make these that would be really easy. So for like testing your application and things like that, you could composite a whole bunch of steps that a lot of people are going to use. I think it's really cool. Great step for GitHub Actions. I think it's really good. So maybe I'll do a Mighty Mini Monday on one of these as well. Whole list. GitHub CLI 2.0 is here. I don't use it. I use Git, so I don't really use this. But if you do use it, the new version came out. It's probably better. You should probably use it. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to open source projects. I have two. I thought we could talk about these two and some of the other solutions out there a little bit more. Karmado. Karmada. That's what yeah, it's like an armada, except it's for Kubernetes. So I'm sure it's Karmada. It's an open source, multi-cloud, multi-cluster Kubernetes orchestration tool. So yeah, actually, you know what? I didn't get all of these up here. Let me pull up. There's two more that I know of off the top of my head that I forgot to bring up. Please hold while I Google these other ones. For some reason, I'm blanking right now. Or I'd be typing more. All right, let's. Oh, I want the GitHub page. Where's GitHub? There we go. There we go. All right. Beautiful. All right, pulled those up. So we're just going to talk about multi-cloud a little bit. I actually would be really interested in knowing if any of you have done multi-cloud before. And if you have, let me know. Yeah, very interested in knowing. It's an interesting topic. Generally, a lot of people talk about not being locked into a vendor, but they don't really do it because it's very difficult to not be locked into a vendor. There's key aspects that just aren't going to work. Maybe you can get 80% of your stack not locked into a vendor, but then the other 20%, it's hard. It's hard. And then if you actually want to actively run on 2 or more clouds at the time, not just vendor lock-in, but actively be using 2 clouds. This is the most high availability you can get, because now if one cloud provider goes down, you have a chance that the other cloud provider isn't down and you can still work. This is a very hard problem. We can get into why, but here's some projects that try to make this a little bit more easy, English is difficult. I find it difficult natively. I feel for anybody that learns English as a second language, except for the French, because I think English is better than French, even though I don't know French. So me making that statement really doesn't make any sense. But they have a lot of unspoken sounds. Anyhow, I feel sorry for everybody that's learned English as a second language. It's like learning Bash. You regret it, but everybody knows it. Moving on. Karmada is a tool that looks to do that. I've never used Karmada. I'd be interested in trying it out. I found it this last week. Multi-cloud interests me in general, so I do keep up on these. Anyways, I'm going to look into it. From single cluster to multi-cluster in multiple clouds. Basically, this allows you to stand up Kubernetes clusters in multiple clouds across multiple clouds. That being said, I haven't used it, so I would be interested in knowing your guys' experiences to date. So yeah, let me know if you guys have done much in multi-cloud. If you know somebody from Karmada and they'd like to do an interview, I would love to interview them, understand a little bit better, a little bit of what sets them apart from some of these other ones that I have actually used. Here's another one. This is the Kubernetes Cluster Federation. So a lot of people call it KubeFed. This is basically coordinating the configuration of multiple clusters from a single set of APIs in a management cluster, or what they call a hosting cluster here. This concept of a hosting cluster or a management cluster basically comes down to basically you'll run a. Have you guys ever seen Gardener? Gardener is another tool that I didn't bring up on here that kind of does this, but I don't like Gardener for several reasons, and SIP is one of those reasons. But anyways, this management cluster is an idea where you have a cluster, a Kubernetes clusters, that its entire job is to manage the rest of your Kubernetes cluster. So you could run something like Argo CD on this, which could manage what runs. It could do your GitOps in all your other clusters. You could run something like another project we're going to look at here soon, which is Cluster API, which then manages your infrastructure across cloud providers. So you could run all of this in your management cluster, and that Kubernetes cluster itself manages other Kubernetes clusters. So you have a cluster of clusters, and it gets a little bit complicated because it's almost like the control plane for your cluster of clusters. That's what a management cluster is. That's how I'm going to explain it from now on. Anyhow, that's what they're talking about here. And so what KubeFet is doing is, in this management cluster, it's worrying about the configuration of your clusters. Now, there's another project from Rancher for management of configuration in your Kubernetes cluster. Let's see. Let's pull up Rancher here. So there's two things from Rancher here. I do probably have more knowledge on Rancher than I should. Fleet is their... So they have two things. Rancher, which is their orchestration of Kubernetes cluster, which also runs in a management cluster. So it uses that same management cluster concept, control plane cluster, which this orchestrates the infrastructure like Cluster API does. And then Fleet manages and orchestrates the configuration of those clusters. So if you're trying, and it uses a bundle approach, it's a unique approach. Anyways, so this helps you use GitOps to manage the configuration of your Kubernetes clusters. So yeah, see, this is groups of clusters. Again, this is really, Kubernetes is going to a cluster of cluster architecture. Nobody runs a single cluster. They run clusters of clusters. I need to do a video on that as well. There's so many videos I need to do. I'm working on it. All right. So Cluster API is another one that orchestrates. It's like Rancher and I don't know why I struggle with Karmada so much. It just does not roll off the tongue. Anyways, Cluster API also does this cluster of clusters. It runs a management cluster and allows you to set up, stand up, and build Kubernetes clusters. So basically, it's an infrastructure provider that provides only Kubernetes clusters, and that provides it on a bunch of different providers. So there's your clusters of clusters. I don't know, I probably said that word too many times, but that is it for me today. Remember, before you go, not next weekend. I will be here for next weekend, but the weekend after that, so the September 13th, I will not be doing news, but I will be releasing a very interesting video I think you'll like. You'll either love it or you'll hate it, one or the other. So that's always good. There will be no mediocrity there. So definitely be watching for that. But yeah, I won't be doing the news that day either. So that being said, thank you guys for all of your support. I super appreciate it. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your week. I hope that this is useful and helpful to you. And I hope that you liked the little bit of compressed. I tried to talk about the subjects more than just, if you haven't left just yet, I have one last thing for you. I hope that you guys haven't left. Let's say you let's say you were here and you noticed that there was a problem in this bat file. What is a bat file anyways? It looks like a bash script. I don't know what a bat file is. This is probably something I should know. All right. Anyways, I will Google that later. If you're here and you're like, man, I really would like to edit this file. I really would like to edit this. Oops, that was not what I meant to do. I hit one key on my keyboard. I can now make a change right here. And I can commit it. And I can actually make a pull request right here. So I don't have to merge the whole stupid thing because I found a bug in the documentation. I can't tell you how excited I am about this. This has changed so much for me right here. Now, obviously, if I was going to sincerely work on something, I'd probably check it out. And then you can run tests and things. Oh, shoot. I didn't switch my screen. I am not good at this live streaming thing. All right, let me switch back. 1 second. Don't leave. We're going to go here. Everyone's favorite class, which I hope you guys have been enjoying those classes. I've worked really hard on the animations. If you're wondering why I don't release classes more often, it's because I've been really working on the visuals of it, and I'm not a good animator. So it's not one of my talents. Anyways, let's say you come to this class and you're like, wow, this sucks. Let's update it. I want to add more information here, but I don't want to clone this entire repo. One key pressed. That's all I did. And look what I have right here. Not only this, I made a change when I was testing this functionality out, and it remembered it for me. And look, I can stage the changes and I can make a pull request right here. I can actually browse the whole repository and open up one of these lessons and be like, yeah, Merrick sucks. And we can go ahead and commit those. Now, there is no terminal. I tried. So yeah, that would have been nice because I prefer using Git that way than using this thing over here. But this is basically just Visual Studio Code, and another way you can get to it is just by doing .dev instead of .com for GitHub. And the way I did it is you just hit period. You just press the period key and it will take you here. This is absolutely fantastic. I meant to show it to you guys before saying goodbye. And so if you've left, I am sincerely, deeply sorry. I have an end note, and I looked at my end note as I was saying goodbye. Maybe I need to put this above the end note. Anyways, yeah, so there you go. I will make a Mighty Mindy Monday on this at some point in the future because it's super cool. Anyways, have you guys yourself a fantastic week. Thank you guys for all of your support. You all are fantastic. I really appreciate you, and I hope you found this entertaining, helpful, and maybe useful. Hopefully useful, but